You are now listening to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. We preserve the history and sport of hunting through curious conversation and action-packed hunts, as well as offering you tips and strategy for more successful hunts. The Hunter's Advantage podcast is powered by Out on a Limb Manufacturing. Out on a Limb is a family-owned company based right here in Oklahoma that makes tree stands, saddle platforms, climbing sticks, and so much more.
Christian, I have a quick question.
What's that?
What bites down harder, a hippo or an alligator?
No idea.
It's a trick question. The Ridge Runner 2.0 bites harder than both of them. But all jokes aside, we use these products all across the land on public or private. These help us get into any tree we want and hunt where the deer actually are.
Most men go to the grocery store for their meat, but these products help you go to God's grocery store. I have used the Out on a Limb Ridge Runner 2.0 and the Shakar sticks for the last few years hunting public land bucks, and I've actually shot several bucks out of this setup. If you want to support the podcast and get some Out on a Limb equipment, make sure to go to outонalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA10 for 10% off at checkout. Once again, if you want to support the podcast, go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA10 at checkout for 10% off. Now let's get back to the podcast. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. Today we're joined by a special guest, Michael Lee of Backwoods Life TV. Thanks for jumping on with us, man. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the invite. I'm glad to be on here.
Yeah, so obviously we're in week one of our How to Hunt series, and we're focusing on the South here today. But before we get too deep into southern deer hunting, can you tell us a little bit of kind of the area and kind of how you grew up hunting, and then maybe a little bit about the origins of Backwoods Life?
Yeah, so I'm from South Georgia, born, raised, still here. Got stuck in the heat wave of the South and decided that I just love this hunting in sauna. So here I am. But no, I mean my family's here. I love the South. I love South Georgia. I mean, we've got kind of a diverse terrain for the most part. Lots of pine trees. If anybody has, been oblivious to the South, we have pine trees everywhere. We're lucky to have a mix of hardwoods, pines, some farmland. There's a lot of agriculture in a lot of part of the states, and the further east in the state you go, it turns into more just pine plantation. So the hunting terrain and the challenges does kind of fluctuate throughout the state. North Georgia is more hardwoods, mountainous, even then you get into the kind of the hills of Georgia, and then you get this flat down here where I'm at for the most part. But yeah, it's kind of a diverse state. It's got a little bit of everything in it, but we kind of have grown up hunting down here in the southern part, hunting agriculture and pine trees for the most part. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Nice.
How's the mosquitoes down there?
State bird.
Yeah. I understand that. That's like the one thing that I don't think other states realize just how bad like the early season hunting is, at least for the South. I don't know what a lot of people consider Oklahoma. Would you consider that a southern state?
Yeah, I'd probably throw that in the South. You're close to Texas, right? So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it's kind of a gimme. That's the thing about the early season is the mosquitoes, they're terrible. You can almost pretty much slap a saddle on them and then ride them, and anything you do, whether that be Thermacell or whatever. But I don't know. I just have I have a pet peeve against those things.
Yeah, it's tough. I was talking to Ben, who's here to help me with some video stuff. One of my camera guys. He's from Georgia as well, so we have we can relate. But I was trying to explain to him, like, he's a lot younger than I am. And so with age comes wisdom. And unless I've got a deer early season that it is going to be like, if I go in there, I'm going to probably get him. I'm not going in there. It's not worth it to go sit and just be miserable with the heat and mosquitoes and stuff. And,
oh yeah.
Thermacells do work great. We work with Lethal Products, and they make a great bug and tick repellent that works great on mosquitoes. But I mean, you still have to be out there with them. So,
yeah, I get that. So we're like we talked about, the goal is to talk about the South today, and you briefly talked about it a little bit in your intro, but in Georgia, obviously there's a good amount of diversity in topography and terrain, like you talked about. But can you dive maybe a little bit deeper into that, what you grew up hunting specifically? Did you grow up hunting all over the state? Did you grow up bouncing around the South and hunting different terrains and topography? And what kind of were those?
For the most part, where I cut my teeth was a mix of pine plantations, hills, and agriculture. I would say the majority of my younger hunting in my life, because see, on my family farm that I hunt now a lot, we didn't have many deer back then when I was growing up. I don't think I saw my first deer on there until I was like 15 years old. And we were in hunting clubs, just like a lot of people are. And what that is, a lot of the hunting club started in Georgia with paper company land. So that's just going to be all pine trees. So we were lucky to have a few landowners that we knew, and we got to hunt their properties as well. And they had a little more agriculture, but for the most part, it was a lot of pines with a few hardwood ridges and little creek bottoms with white oaks and stuff like that on them. And you had to really learn how to hunt. I mean, you had to know. The biggest thing in Georgia was knowing where to hunt at the right time of the year. And back then, now you can hunt over bait in Georgia, but you couldn't back then. So it was really important to find those food sources. And hunting paper company land, you weren't able to do a lot with food plots because you only had roads. Every once in a while, you'd find an old loading deck or whatever that you could clear out, make a little food plot or something. And then, so white oak acorns ran the roost on our hunting lease. Like when them things started falling, they may not be but 3 or 4 big mature white oaks on that property in that creek bottom, but every deer from counties around it seemed like we're coming in there to that spot.
Yeah, we hunt in Oklahoma quite a bit, and there's a few mountain ranges, and the southern portion of the state, there's a lot of pines, and it seems it's everything looks the same when you get into the pines, and like we've had to kind of zoom out a little bit and look more at the topography, and like you said, keying in on those oaks, because if you just go in there and start walking around and looking, it can get pretty overwhelming pretty quick. Very
much so. I mean, it's almost like the deer have it figured out. They've got their own pass through the maze. And even if you find this one trail, it may be a November trail. It may not be a October trail. It's so weird. They've got all these little dynamics in the terrain of those woods that you've really got to figure some things out. And I don't know how you guys hunt like in Oklahoma. I mean, I know it's legal. It's legal to hunt over bait where the places that I've been, it has been anyway. So, I mean, that's a huge attribute, I think, in hunting in the South now, that we can use, corn or whatever kind of feed you want to use. But it takes that massive just jungle of wilderness, and at least you can start isolating it down to, okay, well, I've got some deer in this area that I can get on camera to know even what inventory I have to be able to target in on those deer. So that does help when you're in that very thick stuff.
We hunt a lot of public land, and so you can bait on private, but not on public. And it seems like it's legally. Legally. We've went wandering many times, and it seems like you could walk for a 300-acre piece, and you don't run into a lick of sign, and there's nothing there, and all of a sudden you find them all in one spot. Whether that's in a good bedding area or, like you said, near acorns, it's very interesting. The pines pose a unique challenge in the South, and I don't think it's unique to Alabama or Georgia or Oklahoma. It seems like they're kind of all over, scattered through the South.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to pines, I mean, there's one purpose of a pine tree, and that's to put money in somebody's pocket. Like that. That's what all the landowners they plant pines. It's a long-term investment, and we get to hunt it because it's good habitat as well, and especially if it's managed right. But one thing that private landowners can do really well in these pine plantations is have a burn program. And if you can burn sections on your property of these pines, it'll draw in tons of deer and turkeys and everything because of just that rejuvenated food source every year. So that's something that we utilize as well.
What is a pine plantation, by the way? Is that literally like a tree farm for pines?
Well, yes and no. It's not like a tree farm, but so basically they'll go into this piece of property, and it could be old agriculture land that they plant pines in, and they'll go in and just plant pines in rows space them so far apart, just like they're planting a regular crop. And then those pine trees grow, and then every so many years they'll thin those pines. They'll come in and cut, every third row out or every fifth tree or whatever, so that the remaining trees can just grow and get bigger and bigger and be more marketable. So that's kind of what the cash crop is on pines down here.
I gotcha. Like we said before, we kind of hunt the southern portion of Oklahoma when we're getting into those mountain ranges and stuff where it has primarily pines and, a few oak flats and stuff like that. And from where we hunt in northeast Oklahoma, the deer are a little bit bigger than they are, let's say, in the south where they're basically acorn fed bucks. Is that kind of the same in Georgia where you all have different body sizes of deer and stuff?
Absolutely. On our family farm, which is a lot more agriculture, for example, if we shoot a 4 or 5 year old deer there, that deer is going to weigh on live weight, 225 to 250. And then if you go over to some land that we have leased, it's more just pine trees everywhere, and we can plant some food plots, and they got some scattered oaks in there that are only food source to have, take away the agriculture part of it. Those deer are going to weigh 175 to 200 pounds live weight. So that and the soil difference too. That's another thing.
Right.
The farmland and the river bottoms are going to have a lot more fertile soil. They're going to have more minerals in the soil. Those plants are going to be better and more nutritious than just a lot of the pines down here are planted in sandy clay mix that are just, not great pH and just not going to produce, a lot of great quality food for deer.
Now, do you see that only affecting the deer's body mass, or do you see that affecting the rack size as well?
I think it goes throughout the entire deer. The body mass, is important, especially in, the science behind a deer for the most part is the more they can consume to keep their body to its maximum, everything extra goes to the antlers. So the more ample, food and nutrients that you can provide for that deer's, you got a bodybuilder that can get so big. And that's what you want for that deer's body, because everything he builds up, then everything else goes to antler growth.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that, and that's what I've always been taught kind of growing up as well. But the thing is kind of where we hunt in the southern portion, it seemed like they got super small, almost doe-like bodies, and then they still hold the same huge rack. It just seems like that from anecdotal experience. And then when you kind of mix it two, it's kind of deceiving, because you'll see this small bodied, looks like a little Labradoodle walking with a pretty good set of antlers, and it looks huge. And then you come up here northeast, and maybe you go into Kansas a little bit, and it's just it almost kind of throws you for a loop. And so I don't know, because his Christian's uncle last year shot a 169, 165 off this public piece, and I don't know how much that thing weighed. I mean, it couldn't have weighed just a little over 100, I would think.
I shot a doe the day before, and he cut the head off of his buck, and the two bodies were laying next to each other. I was like, I couldn't tell you which one was the buck and which one was the doe. Do you guys see that in the kind of the more mountainous, piney stuff?
Yeah, I've actually got a friend that doesn't hunt too far from our lease, and all of his property is pine trees basically. And he killed a deer that was in the 150s, and he said that's the first deer I've killed that scored more than it weighed.
That's awesome.
And like I said, on our family farm, that 4 or 5 year old deer, he weighed 225, 250. And I mean, a nice buck there is going to score 150, 160. So,
gotcha.
225 or 250 is no slouch. That's a big deer anywhere.
That's
Midwest, South, that's a big one.
We've shot does that were 100, 170.
That's a good one.
Yeah. For Georgia, that's big does.
So when you're hunting pines, I feel like the mountainous, piney, cedar, just native grass, that mix can be kind of overwhelming, because when you think of TV hunting too, you think of ag, you think of deer on field. That's not typically what you're thinking about. So what do you see deer utilizing the most for bedding in pine country? Is it cedar thickets? Is it just briar patches? Or what kind of stuff do you kind of see them keying in on?
Well, down here anyway, we don't have a lot of cedars. You'll see a few scattered through the creek bottoms, more so because it's got better soil than the higher ground. I know, like out in you guys' direction, definitely there's a lot more cedar breaks and stuff like that. And I love hunting those things because they're usually got tons of deer in them. They love to bed in those cedars. And in here, if you find a cedar, it's good to hunt around it because the bucks love to rub on cedars here because it's a softer bark, and I guess they like that cedar smell, and it gets in their horns and looks really pretty. I guess they go for fashion statements or something. Yeah. But it's good to target those cedars if you can find them. But from bedding standpoint, it's kind of surprising because we have some of the taller grasses like a broom sage and things like that, which is just kind of a tall tan grass that kind of loves to grow in those pine areas, and especially as those pines get taller. But even when they're younger, that gets really thick in that stuff. And in the summertime, the deer really get on the edges of the pines more, and like in the cooler edges of the bottoms, like the creeks and stuff, because it's the temperatures here. Like right now, it's probably 100 degrees outside almost, and they're really just tucking back into those bottoms and trying to stay in the shade. And you'll even see it, like when they come out in the fields in the evening, they'll stay in the shade. But as the shade goes out further, they go out further. but as it's into the season part though, like 2 or 3 to 5 year old pine trees are great to hunt in because they're short and bushy, and then all that grass will grow up in it, and those deer can lay out there in the sun, stay warm. They can hear anything coming through that thick stuff. They can smell from the downwind side or upwind side, and that's really the best habitat is with the pine and grass mix down here.
Yeah, what would you do in a situation where, let's just say, you kind of take baiting out of the equation? Because I love using bait. Oklahoma's a bait state. It feels like the ultimate equalizer. You can have 2 acres and you're like corn feeder. And it just kind of helps quite a bit. What would you do if you couldn't have a feeder? Let's say all the mass producing, all the acorns, they're gone. Would you put any stock into hunting different types of topography? So creeks or bottoms or fingers or clear cuts. Which one of those kind of things do you guys key on or hunt if you can't hunt food?
I'm a big fan of transition areas. So it's where 2 different types of woods mix. So you may have a really thick stand of pines with tall grass in it, just thick bushy trees, and wherever that stops right on the edge of like a hardwood bottom, where that kind of opens up, that first open area, those deer love to walk those transition lines between the 2 different types of timber. I've hunted a lot of bottoms like that, where like maybe there's a creek that runs through the bottom. You can see 50 yards on each side of hardwoods, and they run up to some pines. Those are awesome areas to hunt, just to catch deer traveling. And like I said, if you take the acorns into the equation, it's phenomenal. But you take the acorns out, they still walk those transition areas. And I think from hunting a mature buck standpoint, those are awesome areas for those bucks to travel on those wood lines because they know that's where the does are going to walk.
How would you go about your summer scouting for these things? Like, are you a big camera guy? Are you more boots on the ground and just kind of looking for those, or how do you go about it during the summertime?
Familiarizing myself with the property is always number one rule anybody should do with anything. But I do run a lot of cameras. I try to find those food sources because what's typical here, because of the vast terrain of woods for the most part, you've got 2 different types of bucks. You got a homebody and a nobody. Because the homebodies, that deer, like I've got a few deer that are 4 or 5 year olds that we've killed or that I know about right now. They've stayed their whole life within about 100-acre area of our property. But I also have bucks that they'll be on our property all summer, and then as soon as the velvet comes off, they're gone. And if they make it, they'll come back in late season. So that's really dependent upon the food sources available and all that, and that food changes. If you take like baiting out of the equation, early season here, if you can find persimmon trees, deer love persimmons down here. That's probably one of the best ways to kill, especially a buck with your bow in early season, is on a persimmon tree. If you have no agriculture or anything, they love grapes. We have a lot of muscadine grapes down here, and if you can find those, deer hit those really, really hard. And for the most part, that's as tough as it gets is early season trying to hunt those kind of food sources, because that's all done by walking through the woods a little bit and seeing, oh, there's a persimmon tree. There's a grapevine that 100 feet up a tree that you found a few grapes on the ground, hang a camera there and see what's coming in, try to make a pattern, and then try to figure that out from there and buy your time until the acorns start falling.
Yeah. Do clear cuts come into the equation at all for where you guys are in the pines? Like, is there any hunting that new growth, targeting on those kind of areas, or are those not as big a role in maybe Georgia?
No, that's a really good spot, especially the first year of a clear cut is good because especially like in rifle season, it seems like the bucks like to run the does out into those open areas, and then they can stay on them and see them better because they don't get in that thick cover and get away as easy. You can kill a lot of good bucks during the rut on hunting the edges of those cutovers, and that goes back to the transition area. So if you've got like a wood line, they pop out on. But usually after that first year of that clear cut, the food gets natural browse all grows up. And I mean, you'd be surprised at what deer are out there browsing on. It's crazy at what they eat. And down here, a lot of times on those clear cut areas, before they go in, they'll kind of clean up the land to replant trees on. And when they replant the trees, then they'll fertilize those by air, either by helicopter or by airplane. So they'll go in and fertilize that. And then it just kickstarts all that growth out there. I mean, it's meant for the pine trees, but everything gets the benefits of the fertilizer. And then the deer are just all out in it.
Yeah, we have a lot of success hunting like select cuts. So stuff that they come in and take different types of trees and pines, but they don't take at all. Mm-hmm. And it seems like in year 2 or 3 of those select cuts, that browse and all the stuff from the ground comes back and it's 5, 6, 7, 8 foot tall. Mm-hmm. And on the ground, it looks so thick. But when you get up above it, you're like, oh, I can see forever in here. And the deer, it seems like it's the perfect height where there's a lot of browse on the ground, but there's also it's also clear enough where you can get up above it and hunt and see quite a bit. We've had a lot of success doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's you're spot on with that. I mean, because the higher up you get, the more you can see, and you may be sitting on a 100-acre cutover, and then you can see different spots scattered out there at different yardages, and those deer definitely have ample food out there until the weather gets really cold and knocks it down. That's early season is phenomenal when you can get those spots right there down in.
Do you guys have like any swamps or anything like that?
Oh yeah, we've got some nasty stuff.
Do you have any experience with any of that? Because there's this one particular spot, and it's kind of a personal thing that I'm asking. But it's kind of just how you say, what we've been talking about, just pines, hills, more hills, pines, and then a little bit of oaks. But there's just one spot that it kind of drops down into like this pretty gnarly, thick stuff. And it's just swampy as can be. I've always heard the saying that, the big bucks have wet feet. And I'm kind of curious to go and check that out a little bit late summer, but I need a little bit of motivation, if that makes sense, to go do that. So do you have any experience?
Oh yeah, we've hunted tons of stuff like that. We've actually hunted in swamps that it's not like tons of standing water, but it was swampy and muddy, and we would find like an island out in the middle of it. And I say an island, I mean, it may not be but a 50-yard rise that's got, an acorn tree on it or something, or just a spot that's clear enough and dry enough that the deer would come across it and use it. Because what they like to do, they're not going to just go walk through the most nastiest, thickest mud they can find. They're going to hit high spot to high spot. So you can find little rises out there and find those trails. The good thing about going and scouting the swamp is you can see the trails. Like, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Really heavy trail. The bad part is you really need to wear snake boots, especially in the South. It's bad this time. Mosquitoes are a whole nother level. Ticks, snakes, like everything that you hate in the woods lives in the swamp.
Jake's the boy who cried snake. He likes to be the guy when you're walking and he goes, snake, and you kind of freak out and jump. I almost stepped on a rattlesnake one time because he goes snake, and I'm like, haha. And I take one more step. He's like, I'm serious. And I look down, there's a rattlesnake laying at my feet.
It was one of those fat old timber rattlers, and it was almost a bad deal, but it wasn't, so it's fine.
But did you die?
I've seen more snakes than I want to. I promise you that.
I ain't about them.
So what are your season dates? When are your favorite times to hunt in the South? You know, obviously maybe pre-rut or rut, but apart from those things like late season, early season, can you talk a little bit about your season dates and then kind of what your favorite part and stuff to key in on is apart from the rut?
Yeah, our archery season usually starts the Saturday after Labor Day, so that's pretty early in September. Yeah. It's brutal, like it's really, really bad. The only time I've even hunted that early in the season in recent memory is when we've had like a tropical storm or something that comes through, cools it down, maybe get a little bit of rain, and I can tuck up in a blind and enjoy being in the woods with it not 95 degrees. Because I've hunted the days of being in the stand in the afternoon and it's 98 degrees, and I'm done with that. I'm young, dumb, and I'm over that. Got the T-shirt. My favorite time to hunt, honestly, is probably later in the season, like right after Thanksgiving. Usually our rut can kick off anywhere from November 1st through, I don't know, the 28th of November. That's kind of like the prime time around here. It just depending on what part of the state you're in, it's kind of all over the place. Georgia actually has ruts that start in early October and go all the way to January, depending on where you're at. It kind of bounces around.
Oh, wow.
But where we're at, November is like the prime time. But I've had a lot of success, usually like the week of Thanksgiving or the weekend after Thanksgiving. And I think what's happening there is a lot of the mature bucks are coming off of those first rounds of does that they've been kind of after the first 2 or 3 weeks of the month. And so now they're out of those does, the older mature does that come in first. And now they're looking for anything they can find. And they're going back to food usually around late November, early December to kind of rebuild after the rut, also looking for does at the same time. So that time can be really, really good. And then later in the year when the rut's probably pretty much over and done with, unless you get a yearling that comes in December, January, early January, that's when the food sources are really, really key.
So when you're talking, I just got curious about this. You know, if you had to describe kind of like, it's hard to say, but a state and just put a statement on a whole state, but what is kind of the hunting culture of Georgia like? Like, is it a brown it's down state? Is it more management minded in the last decade? Like, kind of where do you kind of put it as it currently sits, just broadly?
I think right now the average person is a mix. I really think we get a lot of out of state hunters, especially from Florida, that come up here, and for decades, Florida hunters got a bad name because they people call them shooting everything.
Yeah, if it's a spike, I like that kind of guy.
Exactly. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. Their goal was to come up here and shoot a deer. And I can't blame them. I mean, if I drove from Miami to Georgia to hunt a weekend, I probably want to shoot a deer too. So for us that live around here, it was a little bit much. But I think the overall consensus of the hunter mentality is Georgia is trophy minded, but we still like to shoot deer. So, that might be, instead of shooting that spike, it might be a 15-inch 8-point, which in some places is a fine deer, but a lot of people won't pass that 15-inch wide 8-point for that, trying to kill a 140 or 150 or 160 or, whatever. They're not going to pass up a ton of bucks trying to kill a giant buck when there's a nice buck standing in front of you. So and a lot of people like me, I mean, we'd like to eat deer. So, I mean, I'm conservation minded. I'm management minded. I'm one of those that I know if I shoot that deer, then he's done. I mean, he's not going to get any bigger than what happens right now. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I've been blessed to go all over the country doing what I'm doing. And I've shot a lot of big deer, not tooting my horn. I've just been blessed to go a lot of places and help a lot of great people that have helped me out. But here at home, I'm pretty picky about what I shoot. but at the same time, it's all about having fun. So if that, 15-inch wide 8-point is what makes your heart beat out of your chest, and that's what you're going to be proud of it, then man, go for it. I'm good with that.
That's a good point. What about buck to doe ratio? Like, are you would you consider Georgia a state that shoots a lot of does? I mean, you said you like to shoot deer. Is there a good amount of bucks? What is the buck to doe ratio, just anecdotally, just in your experience, been like?
We do have way more does than we do bucks. Where I hunt on our lease land, it's a little bit closer, I think. On my family farm, we've got a lot more does than bucks. We probably need to shoot more does every year than what we do. But at the same time, you just get tired of fooling with them after a while. You can't do it so much. You can't. I mean, you got people that you call like, no, I do not want another deer. No, thank you. So I just shoot them and waste them or nothing like that. I want to give them away if I don't have room for them. But I think Georgia as a whole, there's parts of the state that it's out of whack pretty good, and then there's other parts that it's not terrible. But I do think our doe population out exceeds the bucks overall pretty substantially.
I know exactly the person you're talking about. I have an uncle that goes, hey, you need to shoot me a deer. And every time I bring him one, a full deer gutted out, because I'm a gentleman, I gut it out before I bring it to him. He goes, oh, I thought it was going to be like skinned and processed and in bags and stuff. I was like, listen, brother, if I do that, it's going home with me.
That's right.
I ain't doing that for you.
Yep. Yeah, there's all those people that want the free signed, sealed, and delivered deer. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. If I'm going that far, it ain't getting given away. Think is, if I was, coming up to Michael and I said, hey, Michael, I plan on coming. I'm a non-resident of Georgia. Maybe that does hurt your feelings a little bit, but let's just bear with me. But let's say I'm a non-resident of Georgia. I say, hey, I'm coming for, a good hunt in November. I know little to nothing about Georgia. What would you tell me is kind of the key or something that is required for me to have success on just a regular hunt on public land? Like, what tip would you give me? What area would you point me to? Maybe a region of the state? What would you tell me?
Furthest away from where you're living, I assume.
Yeah.
Around Atlanta and just have fun. Public land is very tough in Georgia. It's very tough. The best public land spots they do quota hunts only. So you have to be drawn for those hunts. And then there's, this weekend is the only weekend they're going to let people hunt this place. There's some really good quota hunts. But as far as like, okay, man, you need to go here and hunt this public land and good luck, it's pretty tough. I'm not a fan of it. And I mean that with all due respect, but just because of safety. Because we have a rifle season that starts in mid-October and goes all the way through early January. And that's a long rifle season. And
good God.
There's a lot of people out there that I don't know that have guns.
It's true.
That I don't know, that's just scary to me. I've been blessed, man. We've always had a hunting club or family land to hunt. So, or private lease or whatever. So I've never had to hunt public land in Georgia per se. But from the people that I know that do and have, you get there really early and you go a long, long ways into the property, farther than anybody you think would ever go, and then keep going.
That's good advice.
Yeah. Then that way you've got a pretty good chance you're not going to get daylight and look, and there's going to be Jim Bob sitting over there 50 yards from you. It's cold.
Grunt rattled in for the 5th time that morning. Yeah.
And I mean, there's some good, WMA wildlife management areas is what they are here. And you can kill some nice bucks. Don't get me wrong, but you have to do a lot of preparation work, a lot of scouting, a lot of homework to know where you can and can't go in there. And there's only so many roads that you can drive, and then you just got to walk from there. And so and then you got to get the deer out if you do shoot one. So it's a challenge. Like I said, I'm not a fan of it. Those quota hunts, they're not that bad because some of those may only have 20 people on 1,000 acres, or 5,000 acres or whatever. So that's not as bad. You can, and those usually have a lot of wardens on the property during those hunts to make sure everybody follows the rules, stays on the property. do those kind of things. But yeah, it can be tough, man.
Let's say you're talking to that same non-resident. What would you give him an advice of this sounds bad, but I know there's a better way to put it, but antler wise, like what would be considered a decent buck for a non-resident to come out here and shoot? Obviously anybody can shoot what they want because it's their tag and stuff. But for instance, we went to Kansas last year, and the first like mid 120s I was wanting to shoot it, but we had a buddy that hunted Kansas before, and he was like, dude, you don't want to fill your tag, a Kansas tag, on a mid 120s. And so like, what's that advice you'd give that non-resident coming to Georgia?
Are you hunting public or private land? Let me proceed with that.
We're going to be budget guys in this scenario.
Public land.
Yeah.
You probably want to shoot whatever legal deer you see.
Okay.
Yeah. And because there's some counties that they have a width restriction, or they have, 4 points an inch longer on one side or whatever. Those are, quote, the trophy counties in Georgia. Like if you're on a WMA hunt or quota hunt like that, or any public land, you definitely you want to shoot the first legal deer that you get a shot at. Now, on some of these other properties, if you see a spike or a 4 point, something like that, you may not want to. But if you see a basket rack 8 point, you're probably going to want to shoot him, because I promise you, if he goes over the next ridge, somebody else is going.
So what would you say to private? Let's say someone got permission, or they somehow got on a lease up there.
Depending on what part of the state it's in, if you're in a high agriculture area like on the western part of Georgia, I mean, you could hold out, and I would say realistically, if you had the best week of November to hunt, like a whole week or whatever, 130s would be the low end and up. And I think, if you were patient, you could probably kill a 40s deer or better.
Yeah, I wouldn't be enough patient. The first 130 I've seen is getting deflated, hopefully. But
well, at the same time, if you got permission to hunt, and you don't know what that landowner's rules are,
right.
But yeah, just going clean slate. If you're on agriculture land, you can easily kill a deer that size.
I've been using the new Exodus Rival cell camera for the last couple months, and I have found a beautiful mainframe 8-point with tons of stickers to go after this fall.
Ooh.
One thing I do appreciate about Exodus trail cameras is all of the cameras share the same data plan, so you only pay for what you need. A lot of cell cam companies charge you for HD pictures. I've seen prices of $5 for 50 HD pics. Exodus is going to give you unlimited HD pictures right to your phone, which is awesome when you're sitting there in the middle of the summer and it's 100 degrees and you just want to binge a bunch of trail cam photos.
If you're looking for a solid cell camera with great performance and a 5-year no BS warranty, go check them out. So as we all know, hunting gear is something people can make way too complicated. Arrows can be the exact same way. Instead of going down all those rabbit holes trying to sift through the endless information that's online and you're not really sure if it's right or wrong, Exodus makes it simple to get the right arrow for your exact setup.
So go online to the Exodus Arrow Builder. It takes less than a minute. You're going to enter your draw weight, your draw length, and how heavy of a point you're shooting. And it's going to be that simple. Let the guys at Exodus take care of the rest.
So if you're interested in Exodus Rival cell cameras or a new set of their MMT arrows, just go to exodusoutdoorgear.com and use code HA15 for 15% off anything on their website.
Once again, that is exodusoutdoorgear.com. Use code HA15 at checkout for 15% off. Now let's get back to the podcast.
Okay.
The quota hunt has been, the quota draw thing has been really interesting to me the last couple of years, especially, the more and more people start to flood to public land and the more people that get displaced off leases with land prices going up and stuff. I feel like putting in and kind of hedging your bets, like we're talking about hunting the South here, you could put in for quota hunts in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, all over, and get these pretty much guaranteed better experiences just because lack of pressure, way less people, and way more acreage. I feel like that's putting in for different hunts, maybe across neighboring states would be a good way to kind of hedge your bets. And you're not going to get one every year, but maybe every 3 years you do, and you get a way better experience that way. I feel like for the average person, that's kind of a slept on route to go.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's thinking outside the box for sure. I mean, a lot of people, I think it boils down to people just don't have enough expertise on the different states to know how to put in for everything. And then, okay, what if I get drawn for Alabama? What do I do now? I mean, maybe I don't know about the property. I don't know where to stay. I mean, I have to figure a lot of these things out. And for the most part, it's a very economical way to hunt. There's no doubt. But if I'm going to put in for a state for something like that, though, I mean, you guys have referenced Kansas. Kansas is phenomenal public ground. Like if you do your homework and look at the different maps, because ton of that resources are available, and especially if you're going to go bow hunt Kansas, there's tons of walk-in property that's got some really nice deer on it. And if you are willing to walk in there and carry a blind or a climber and do that work, I mean, I think you'd have a really good chance of. I'd hunt west than I would south.
Yeah, I can second that for sure.
Yeah, I've done it. I've done walk-in hunts in Kansas. I've killed actually a lot of turkeys on walk-in land in Kansas. And I've had some shots at some really good bucks out there like that too.
So I have to ask you, I know this is supposed to be about other states other than Kansas, but did you notice anything about whether that be hunting pressure or, I guess what I'm saying is when we went up there for the November hunt, like we stayed like a week in Kansas, and during the rut, it was just packed with people. You ran into people, you were walking under them, you're getting shined at, with headlamps when you're walking in. But during the early season and late season, it was almost desolate. You basically had a whole, early season, you had a whole bean field to yourself sometimes. And then late season, I mean, you just didn't see anybody. Would you say that would kind of be the same way about Georgia?
Yeah, I think 100%. I mean, everybody wants to hunt when it's right.
Right.
In everybody's mind, I want to hunt the rut. That's what everybody thinks. I just got to hunt the rut. And to me, especially bow hunting, the rut is the hardest thing to hunt.
I hate the rut.
I've hunted Kansas with outfitters and seen giant bucks during the rut. And I saw 170 today. He was with that doe, and he might be 4 miles away by tomorrow. I mean, that's just the way it is. I hate bow hunting the rut. I hate it. I mean, I don't want to do it. I'd rather go somewhere during the rut that I can rifle hunt, and then I'll get my bow back out in later in the season when they're hitting food sources again. I may miss out on some bucks that are gone, but somebody else will show up, and I can hunt over, food source of whatever sorts and try to get that buck coming back to patterning again. That's what I like.
On your private pieces, what kind of guy are you? Are you the guy that has this target buck and you stick with him, or are you a guy that it's just like, okay, I'm gonna take what God gives me, basically?
No, if it's a mature deer, that's all that matters to me. I mean, by my standards anyway, if it's a 4.5 or older buck for Georgia, I'm going to be happy with that. I don't care if he's one I've seen before or never seen before. Like right now, this time of year, I got a pretty good inventory on all of our property. I know the resident bucks. So if one of those walk out, I'll know if he's the right one or not, for what I want to do. But then again, if the neighbor's 170 walks out there, and I don't care how old he is.
I think you got a friend in Jake then. He's got the same.
Yeah. That's my thing. That's kind of where me and Christian differ, because he hunts primarily for age, which is great. Like where we grew up, if you've seen a 3.5-year-old deer, you did something. But it could be a 1.5 years, like 160-inch deer, and if it's a 1.5 years, I don't care if that thing has potential to be a 200. That's as old as he's going to get. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that's funny that and I'm kind of glad you said that, because I feel like there's a lot of people, especially from the social media side, if you were to say something like that, you almost get scrutinized, because it's just like, oh, you don't care about conservation, anything like that. It's just like, listen, to a certain extent, like I paid my dues of conservation. That's what my lifetime tag's for, all that good stuff. But I don't know. It's just, I don't think people realize that you can't take it like too seriously, because more than likely that deer is just going to, kind of like you referred to earlier, it's going to go over the next ridge and you're never going to see it again.
I'll put the question to both of you guys. Whoever wants to go first can. If I invite you to come hunt with me, and I say we can sit and stand together, I don't care. I'll guide you on your hunt and say, all right, there's a buck that just came out. He's a shooter. Would you ask me how old he is or what he's going to score if I just say he's a shooter?
Probably not.
I would say, hey man, I'm not from Georgia. It looks mature to me. That's what
like you're hunting with me. I say, hey man, that's a shooter. If you want to shoot him, go for it. If I'm hunting one of you guys and you say that's a shooter, of course, if he walks out and he's like a 4-point that I know is a small deer, and I'm like, man, I'll wait on the next one, whatever. But my point is, you analyze things to the depth that you want to analyze things. If you're out there just to put meat in the freezer, you don't care what it looks like. You're just going to shoot a deer, right? And then there's nothing wrong with that. If you've only got 5 acres to hunt and you want deer meat in your freezer and forkhorn comes out and you shoot him, then hey, you're legal, then go for it. But where I was going with all that is the trophy's in the eye of the beholder. That's really what it boils down to. If you're happy with it and you have fun, that's where I put it. Like if that deer walks out and man, your chest is beating and you just, man, I got excited. I got the adrenaline rush. That's what we enjoy. That's the high part of this thing. Now, I've done it before plenty of times. I've seen that, and that's happened to me. And I shoot the deer, and I go over there, and he's a lot smaller than I thought. But then I think,
there.
I mean, it's always there's only a couple times in my life I got to when they were actually bigger than I thought, and I'm like, wow, that's good. But it's all about that experience. It's about having fun, and you don't have to impress anybody but yourself. That's the way hunting should be. Just enjoy it. And if you want to hold off and only shoot 5-year-old deer that score whatever, go for it. If you want to shoot 2-year-old deer that score 160, me and you can hunt together.
All right. You'll never get a no out of me. I can guarantee that.
I do appreciate that. I think it is more of a Southern value. Like I don't see a lot of Midwest guys have that. I feel like Southern deer hunters have fun. Like nothing gets me more pumped up than watching a couple guys on public land in Alabama shoot a forky and just whoa, because I'm like, I would react the same way. I love shooting deer, but you go to the Midwest, it's almost like let's shun this guy from the county. This guy never needs to be hunting here again.
I mean, and I know guys like you're talking about, I'm not knocking them. I mean, everything is relevant to, if I could hunt Iowa, if I was an Iowa resident, I had a great piece of property and I could get my bow tag and I could bow hunt all year, every day if I wanted to. Of course, I'll be super patient and try to shoot the biggest buck that I can. I can't do that though. In Georgia, I can hunt every day if I want to, but we don't have Iowa deer. We have Georgia deer. That's the difference, that those guys don't understand that, okay, if I'm on your property, I'm going to hunt by your rules. If I'm in your state, I'm going to hunt by your state's rules. If I'm in my state, I know I've been here, I've hunted since I was 9 years old. So I've got decades of hunting experience in Georgia. I've never killed a 170 in Georgia. It hasn't happened. I don't even know. I may not have killed I do have one 160 in decades of hunting. If you're in Iowa and you've hunted decades like I have, I would hope that I'd have, some bigger deal. I'd hope I'd killed a booner by now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're everywhere, but it's a very realistic goal. Down here, there's a lot of people I know that can hunt their whole life here in Georgia and they will never kill a deer over 130. It's just the reality of what your hand you're dealt with. So you got to keep it all to scale and have fun with it. And I can't stand the guys that, like, if you go shoot that 2-year-old and he does score 160, that are going to get on, oh my God, you shot a 2-year-old. That would have been a new world record deer. Well, guess what? No, he's not. You can go look at him on my wall whenever you want to.
He's about this old.
Yeah, he's about this 2 back straps old. That's exactly it. So, I mean, it's all relative. And I hate to see it in the hunting community, just how people, I mean, like you said a while ago, social media is horrible. I mean, we deal with it, man. I mean, we've got, over 1 million followers on Facebook, and man, you can't imagine the comments that we get every day.
Scum of the earth is on there, I bet, huh?
It's terrible. And no matter what I do, I'm wrong. If I shoot a 5.5-year-old booner, I'm wrong. If I shoot a 2.5-year-old 10-point, I'm wrong. If I shoot 2 turkeys in one shot, I'm wrong. I shoot a Jake, I'm wrong. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm wrong.
Don't even bring up the corn feeder, though.
No, don't. Dude, there's a video of me. I shot a really nice buck in Georgia last year. My first of my 2 bucks in back-to-back mornings, actually. We had a great hunt. I was on a food plot. There was no corn out. There was an old feeder strapped to a tree. Hadn't had feed in it, God knows when. There's probably 28 birds living in the thing. I'm sitting in a shooting house on a food plot with a feeder that was empty, and this buck comes by. It's a rut. He's just cruising hard looking for does. And I had a doe in there that morning that must have been smelling right because he was the third buck, I think, to come through there, right at daylight. And he comes in there and I think he's a 9-point. And I'm like, man, let's shoot him. Like, he's a good looking deer. I shoot that deer. I shoot him. I hit him with my rifle. He falls straight down. Somehow he gets back up. He goes 30, 40 yards, and he just does a dirt flip. Man, game over. We're high-fiving. I got ridiculed for hunting over a food plot, hunting over a feeder that didn't even have feed in it. I got ridiculed for shooting too small of a buck, for hunting out of a box stand, for using a high-powered rifle with a scope, for the deer not falling and dying on the impact of the shot. He got up. So it was a bad shot, even though he died 40 yards away with nasty blood trail. I got ridiculed for literally I was sitting in, I had camouflage on. They probably got me for that.
Wasn't the right pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't match the box stand inside carpet or something. What I mean? Dude, everything I did, but the only thing that restored my faith in humanity is for every one of those comments, there was that was an awesome hunt. And I got excited. Like, you can hear me breathing heavy. I mean, I was jacked up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely not the biggest deer I've ever killed, but I had fun during that hunt. But everybody wants to break you down, bring you down whenever you're having fun. That's just doing it right.
It seems like if you're not 50 feet up in a tree saddle hunting with a longbow and you made your own arrows from blue jay feathers and stuff like that, you're not doing it the right way. And it's been really refreshing talking to you, because that's what I feel like more people need to hear, is just like, have fun with it. Like that's why we do it, because we like doing it. We like eating it. We like shooting it. We like showing it off. And like, Lord forbid you say that now because, oh, you're a trophy hunter. Kiss my butt. That's what I gotta say.
That's exactly right, man. I mean, and we've got videos, and if you guys ever hop on our Backwoods Life Facebook page and just scroll through our videos and see some of our hunting clips. I posted a video. This is from last year. I shot a buck with my bow, and yes, there was corn on the ground because it was 100% legal where I was at. And I shot a nice buck. I mean, he's 140, 150 inch buck with my bow, and this thing got like 20 million views in a week on Facebook. And so, of course, they were coming out of the woodwork. I shot, and so you can see the arrow go into the deer. It was quartering just a little bit, but I passed through both sides of the deer. The broadhead goes out one side. The knock is still sticking out of the shoulder on this side. And I mean, it's right behind the shoulder. The deer went 70, 75 yards and piled up. Like, I heard him just crash. He ran hard as he could and done. Well, my arrow broke. So half my arrow's in the food plot. The other arrow stayed with the deer. Part of the arrow stayed with the deer. We found it laying in the woods. But I don't know how many people said that was a horrible shot. And I'm just sitting going, have you ever bow hunted before? And just the comments of course, I was hunting over bait, so I'm Satan. I was sitting in a ladder stand, so now I need to go to have an exorcism done because I hunted off a ladder stand. Yeah. Just all these things, and then I make a bad shot, and a deer with a bow and piles up 70, 75 yards away. I made a bad shot because he didn't fall right there, and just all these things piled on social media. Finally, I just sat back and I'm like, I'm just letting it ride. Like first I was answering legitimate questions like, how far did he go? Man, he went 70 yards. Well, if I'd have shot him, he would have went 50, or he'd have fell right there. That was, just stuff like that. And you're like, we live in a society where people have nothing better to do, and they're so miserable with their lives that they want to destroy the people that are happy and having fun. And
don't you dare have fun on social media.
How do you have fun in life now?
Yeah.
How do you enjoy breathing? Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's people, you went 70 yards, like, well, you would have shot him with a Magnus buzz cut. He would have went That's, yeah, I'm with you. I can't stand that either. Like you said, the trophy's in the eye of the beholder, and like, holy crap, we're going to criticize our way into not having any fun. I refuse to do it. Jake and I have talked about in this last season. We're like, let's plan some trips. Let's hold our goals lightly, and let's go have some freaking fun. Shoot deer early and shoot them often. That's what we want to do.
There you go. That's what it's about. Having fun, man. Enjoying it. Being out there with your buddies. I love hunting camp. That's
That's the
place
best.
to be. My favorite place to be is with hunting camp with some of my best friends and my family, having a good time. And if we kill something, that's even better.
So I kind of want to hear the story of this Georgia 160, if you don't mind telling us.
All right. So that was a piece of property that I had several years ago. And this was a buck we had on camera all through growing out in Velvet. I never knew. I didn't have a clue that he was as big as what he was. Not even a clue. Like on camera, on trail camera, he looked like, I was calling him a mid 40s, maybe a 150. And he's an 8 point, and he had one kicker on his G2.
That's a monster. 8 point.
He's an 8.
Yeah. Yeah. He's 8. He's got one. He's got a fork on his 2, just probably 2 or 3 inches long to make him a 9. And but I'm seeing him on camera a lot. And I'm like, this buck. I forgot what we had names for all the deer back then. I quit doing that because all the big ones that I named, the neighbors would kill or they would die. And we'd find them dead. I mean, something bad happened. You never name your deer. That's not rule number 1. I name them all shooter and sausage and hamburger. That's what. But this buck was regular on camera. I think we named like Mr. Big or something. I don't even remember. But I knew he was a clean 8. And I'm like, man, that is a stud. And I'm thinking 40s, 50s right now. And I'm like, man, that's going to be a good deer. So we start hunting, and bow season comes in. I shoot like a nice 130 class deer with my bow, which was great, especially for early in the year. We killed a couple more real nice deer, but this deer just nowhere to be seen. Like he disappeared from camera for a while. And then the closer we got to November, he started showing up on the one that we were getting camera, pictures of him on camera, that feeder. And he was, he'd be with a doe, and then he disappeared. And he'd show up on the other side of the property on another camera. So it was like a big chess match. And finally, one afternoon, I just said, I'm just going to go sit in the middle of the property on the biggest field we have and see what happens. And he'd never been on camera at that spot. Never. And sure enough, that afternoon he comes walking out. It's like I only saw for like 3 deer that afternoon, and he was the third one, and right before dark, and I shot him with my rifle, and he ran off. I mean, he went about 80 yards and died. So that was probably a horrible shot, right?
Unethical.
But yeah, when I got to him, I said, I said, man, I think I may have just killed a booter like that big.
Do you remember how big the main beams were? Because for that big of an 8. What was it?
28.
28.
I'm actually looking. I can't turn my computer, but he's right there.
All right, we just want a picture after.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you guys a picture.
28. Dear God.
Yeah.
So we got done talking to Joel Turner from Shot IQ, a few weeks back maybe, and he was talking about how to stay calm in the moment, because buck fever kicks in. I'll be honest, the last probably every deer I've ever shot in my life has been from either what I call a form of muscle memory or something like that. But like I tend to black out, and then I see a deer running off. That's just shame on me. But what's it like having a deer of that caliber, in your crosshairs? Like, what's going through your mind at that point? And like, how do you keep your composure?
Just make a good shot. Like it's just like you said. I mean, I was taught by my dad at a young age how to shoot, how to squeeze the trigger, how to go through your breathing on a rifle shot. And I'm trust me, even in my 40s now, I mess it up sometimes. I'm not gonna say I'm perfect by any means, never will. But I'm like you. I kind of go into the shoot mode, and anybody the years that all the people that have filmed me, they can understand when I say that, because it just happens. I don't really think about a whole lot other than focusing on, I don't even care what I'm shooting. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a doe. Focus on making a good shot, putting that pin or that crosshair right where it needs to be. With a rifle, my goal 100% of the time is to try to drop that animal right where it's standing, if I can, depending on range and everything. And so then actually sometimes when I shoot them when they run, that really surprises me, but they don't usually go far, making good shots. But I relate it back to I played baseball and different sports. Like, I played baseball forever growing up and on into college. And I don't know, I guess I was a pitcher. So they always told me, as a pitcher, you have to be mentally tough. So you got to be able to shake off the noise, shake off the environment, handle your job, no matter what the circumstances are. And I think that I honestly trained me for, being in that hunting environment, to be able to block out the noise, block out the thoughts. You don't think about messing up. When you're pitching, you don't think about making a bad pitch. You just make your pitch. So bow hunting, rifle hunting, the same way, just make the shot.
So do you somewhat like do you talk yourself through that shot, or how do you go about it? Do you focus on a general area, or maybe like a certain spot and you just keep your eyes on there? Because if it's a 160-inch 8-point, it'd be pretty hard not to look, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, you understand the situation, but my thing is pick your spot. And with a rifle, like I'm literally trying to aim at the best of my mindset is try to pick a hair on that deer where I want that bullet to go. So I'll pick that exact spot, breathe and squeeze, and wait on the right angle, the right perfect shot or whatever. I'm not a big fan of shooting at walking animals or running animals or nothing like that. I'll let them go before I do something stupid like that. I've made bad shots like that. That's how I know not to do that. And one thing that I do sitting in my stand a lot of times, especially if I'm on a ladder stand with a shooting rail or anything like that, where I can have my gun propped up, or even if I'm sitting on a vise or whatever, like if a doe walks out that I'm not going to shoot, I'm going to look through the scope and practice. Like I'll sit there and it's like, okay, I got her. Then, okay, I got her. Oh, there's a spike. Okay. All right, I would have shot him right there. I do that thing. Just it's training, it's having fun, and then guess what? There he is, the one you're going to shoot. And I've already done this 3 times right now. Boom, got it. So it kind of works out. And both the same thing. I'm always playing the scenarios through my head. Like, okay, if a deer walks from here, this is when I'm going to try to draw back. This is where I'm going to anchor. I'm going to pick this spot right behind that leg, and whatever. It's just I don't know. I guess it's being in game form in your mind.
Yeah, I used to draw back on deer with my bow, like bucks I wasn't going to shoot. And I found myself like gripping the trigger a couple of times. I'm like, stop. This is not like, and you know how it is with a bow release. I mean, you're talking one good flinch of the back and it's gone. I quit doing that.
I had a good friend of mine. We were hunting together and his dad was there. His dad has since passed away, but he was one of the funniest guys I've ever been around. Just dry, serious guy. But it was super funny. And we were hunting together one afternoon, and he said, we heard him shoot. Okay, cool. And we get down, we go back to the camp, and he's like, all right, Dad, what'd you shoot? I don't want to talk about it. He's like, well, what happened? What happened? Man, he said, I was sitting there, this 4-point walked out, and I was looking at him through my scope, and when I went to pull my hand back, I hit the trigger, killed him. So, yeah, he was like, yeah, I messed up, but it was, doing that same thing. And yeah, with the bow, it's a different story. I mean, you're at full draw and that's not going to be well.
Hey, practice makes perfect. Sound like that guy was practicing for a kill. It ended up working out.
Well, he ate well, that's for sure.
He just got the killing started. That's what we call it whenever we're at deer camp and stuff, and someone shoots like the first doe, they're just getting the killing started.
Got to break the ice, get the monkey off the back, and it's all downhill after that.
Oh, killing is contagious. Where else have you hunted in the South that you enjoy? I know you talked a little bit about Oklahoma. Have you hunted any more of those true South states like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana? Have you done any of that?
I've hunted in South Carolina, Georgia, of course, Alabama, Florida. I guess if you keep going south and west, I've hunted a bunch in Texas. But I've never hunted Louisiana, Mississippi, either one of those. What
are some of the challenges to those kind of states? Do Alabama, Florida, did you enjoy those sort of hunts? Are they low deer density? Are they smaller deer in general? What are those like?
Florida was tough. They don't have a lot of, they have a lot of deer in some parts. I've killed some decent bucks down there. It's kind of like hunting here. I don't live but about 20, 25 miles from Florida line where I'm at. So it's kind of similar to hunting here at my home area. So not a lot different there. Alabama's actually can be a lot of fun. They're in the southern part of where I hunted in central and southern Alabama. Their rut's usually a little bit later than ours, but Alabama's synonymous for green fields, big green fields in the evening, and filling up with deer. They got a lot of numbers, so you usually see a lot of deer. You may not see many big bucks, but depending on where you're at, if you get over towards the Mississippi side over there, there's some pretty good bucks. And the Black Belt region of Alabama, there's some bigger bucks. But the hunting's pretty much a similar terrain to here. They get a little more hills and stuff up there, but it's tons of pines, tons of swamp, tons and tons of swamps. But most of those guys over there, most of all that's private land for the most part that I've been on, but big green fields, and in afternoons they fill up with deer.
One of the things I've kind of admired about a lot of the folks that hunt the South, like you think of, whether it's turkey hunting or deer hunting in the South, like I know the South is really good turkey hunting, but you think about deer, I think there's a lot of folks that hunt the South and they kind of grow up, in areas that are, maybe it's challenging to kill a mature buck, but they kind of stay after it and they find a way to get it done. I feel like I see a lot of people from the South who go to other places like the North, the Midwest, and they do really, really well when they get in a place with way better deer, and better densities and that sort of stuff. I feel like I see that quite a bit.
I've always told the guys out west that I've hunted with, like in Colorado and all that. And I said, the only reason that y'all have deer is because all of us from the South hadn't come out here and hunted yet.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know, you sound like you've hunted enough, had enough tough hunts, like with public land stuff. It makes you a better hunter. Overall, the more obstacles you have and you can pull it off in some of the circumstances like we have here in the South, whether it be the climate or trying to pattern deer in the nastiest, thickest stuff out there, and take that into an Iowa or, Kansas or whatever on some really good private property. I think we can hold our own for the most part. I really do. The guys that really have to get in the trench and work your butt off to kill a big deer. I'm not knocking anybody that does it. And I'm not saying we're better hunters than Iowa hunters or nothing like that by any means, because there's guys out there that can hunt me under the table because they know how to kill big deer consistently. But I do think if you take a good hunter, no matter where they're from, and you put them on great dirt, they're going to get the job done.
Well, it seems like when you go from like the bigwood stuff and the pines and the cedars and the swamps, and there can be a lot of like little intricacies and little, when a lot of stuff looks the same. If you can hunt that stuff, it feels like the learning curve would be so much smaller when you go out to ag ground and stuff with, just big timber stands next to water and stuff. Like when we went to Kansas for the first time, I remember scouting some of the stuff and being like, there's no way that this is that simple. Now, it doesn't mean it's easy because there's other people and it's still a deer, but go ahead, Jake.
I was just going to say, I think it's all due to like what's the limited resource, right? Because for example, in Kansas, it was basically trees. At least where we were hunting, it was like, okay, you see a strip right here and then there's nothing but ag. I wonder where they're at to a certain extent. And then kind of where we hunt, it's pretty monotonous, where, you got those hills and the pines and all that stuff where, you could have 3 different drainages. But the thing is like, you got to figure out which drainage they're actually using, which one's better than the next. And typically that has to do with, the more diversity you can fit into one like near those drainages or something. But just to sum it up, I think it all has to do with like the limited resource and how it differs from state to state.
Yeah, terrain is king of hunting. If I'm going to go to I've hunted Iowa several times and I love it. It's an awesome state, and it's one of the few states when I hunt I have anxiety because I don't know how big a deer may walk out. Like it's that good, right? But I've hunted there and some of the nastiest, thickest stuff. But you can walk through this one or two bottoms on this 200 acres of the thickest stuff in the county with agriculture all the way around it. And you can find primary trails that these deer are going to come down that are, wide as this chair I'm sitting in. And back home, here we may walk through a hardwood bottom like that and there's 20 trails that are this wide that they could come down at any time. I think in the terrain of the Midwest and such, you're kind of forcing deer into smaller areas, especially when the crops are gone, because when the corn's standing in Iowa, you guys know, Kansas and everywhere, it's bad. Like those deer live in those cornfields and they're not coming out until they have to. But when they cut that, they're forced into these smaller wood blocks, and the deck's stacked in your favor there because it's a lot harder for those especially those big deer to hide. And deer in general, you just see the numbers that way. And the climate's got a lot to do with it. I mean, I don't know how cold it gets where you guys are down here, man. You don't have any really what I would call cold weather until maybe November if you're lucky. Yeah. And December it may get cold. Like last year, we had a really cold winter. It really got bad, but I think most of the country got bad last year too. And that makes that controls our environment. Climate's more than almost anything. The colder it is, the better we are. But cold up there is a different cold than down here. So I think there's several factors in the different locations in the country. And it's just learning how to deal with the hand you're dealt.
Yeah, that's for sure. When you're hunting a place like we're talking about, a lot of the South, like you said, is pine. A lot of these big thickets. How do you kind of read or reconcile finding sign in a place where there's a ton of trees, there's a ton of bedding, and how do you kind of narrow it down? Because we see a lot of sign. You might find a place that's littered in sign for hundreds of yards. How do you kind of narrow it down into something that's more actionable?
Big pile of corn.
Yes, that's what I like.
That works.
It does help with scouting stuff. But no, I mean, I really look at property like for the first time that I go in there and I'm trying to figure some things out. I do look at rut activity, and I mean that by I know there's different types of rubs. You got early season rubs where they're just trying to get the velvet off their antlers, and that may not be where that buck's home range is during the rut. I don't look for just regular scrapes. Like you may go down a scrape line and there's 20 scrapes that are big as 2 pie plates or something like that. I look for the big community scrapes. Like I want to find a spot where, okay, there's 2 or 3 trails come together and there's a scrape big as the hood of my truck. And that there's going to be maybe every buck on the property may come across there at some point. And so I try to identify a sign like that. I do like to hunt spots where there's lots of scrapes and lots of rubs together, because that's usually going to be really close to where that buck's living. He's going to go out and he's going to hit those easy spots. And I also just like to get spots in here at home where I can see a long ways, which is an obstacle at times. You may have a spot where you can only look down a road and see 200 yards, and you may only have a split second to see what crosses that road. You just got to be on your toes. So it's pretty tough, but I really think for targeting big deer and seeing numbers of bucks, those community scrapes I think are very, and they start right now. I mean, this deer, they'll make scrapes in August. I've seen it all the way through even till after their antlers fall off. They'll work those same kind of community areas, and they're usually where does congregate and there's food sources.
I liked what you said about the not being able to see very far in a lot of these areas, because when we were young and dumb, what we would do is take like 3 people deep into a select cut and just hunt an edge and be like one person here, 200 yards down, one person here, 200 yards down, one person here. That had no consideration for wind or intrusion or anything like that, but it was fun and it was public land, so we're like, let's do it. And we would notice that deer that Jake would see would not be the same deer that I would see, would not be the same deer that our other buddy would see. And we would have, just a couple hundred yards in between us. It's kind of crazy in that terrain how you can see different groups of deer. And if you're 50 yards off, you might see nothing.
And you're spot on, because down here, what I've seen, especially by using different trail cameras and trying to use those as scouting tools, I could have a spot where maybe I got a feeder out, or I'm pouring protein, or whatever the case is that I'm trying to get my inventory on. I could go 200 yards away and have different deer. And you would never think that those, like, I got this buck on camera here, I got this different buck on camera here, and then I will have overlapping bucks on both of them, but there's some that they will not go to this spot and they will not go to that spot. It's really crazy how they're like that, and being off by 200 or 300 yards, you may be missing the buck that you really want to shoot.
We like to use a lot of trail cameras for that exact reason of, I feel like it's just the law of averages. The more eyes you have in the woods, as long as you're not doing too much damage by putting them out there and checking them every week or something like that. Yeah. We like to put them, sometimes we'll go 150 yards, be like, put another one. Well, we didn't go that far. Well, there's another feature coming through right here that, a buck that goes up that finger may not hit this finger or might not walk by the camera. I feel like trail cams in that sort of environment, when there's so many things that looks the same, can be a really, really helpful tool, I feel like.
I agree wholeheartedly. They do a lot of the homework for you, but it helps you isolate. That's what it is. I mean, our whole point, like if I gave you guys, hey, come hunt my 1,000 acres with no recon whatsoever, it's divide and conquer. And the first thing you can do is go run a bunch of cameras out there, get your ideals narrowed down to say, okay, well, we know this buck's been by here. We know this buck's been by here. Some of these overlap, some of these don't. Where you can kind of isolate where you want to target. But I think a big misconception that people do get by using trail cameras is they think if they don't get a picture of a big deer, there's not one there. And I think that's a horrible thing about the way people hunt nowadays. They rely so much on trail cameras that I know guys like this. Well, I'm not getting anything on camera, so I'm not going. Like I'm not even going to go hunt. There's not a buck I've got on camera that I want to shoot. I know one guy. He's a good buddy of mine, and I respect his thoughts. But he's like, until I get that buck on camera 3 days in a row in daylight, I don't go hunting.
Well, you'll be waiting a while.
He's somewhere. He's somewhere every day. I promise you. I don't believe in that. I believe it gets you in the ball game. But I also know that from experience, I've had 2 trail cameras side by side just to see what would happen, and I got 2 bucks on one of the cameras and 1 buck on the other camera, and they were there at the same time every time. But this one camera never got the bigger deer on camera just because it was a different angle, and he would never walk across this food plot. He just would come to this edge, do his thing, and turn and leave. The little buck, he'd come across. The big buck just wouldn't do that. There's no rhyme or reason. They do what they want to do, not what we want them to do. But to me, if you like to hunt, go get in the woods, because there may be a deer walk by that you don't even know exists on the face of this planet, which is a lot of the deer that have been killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've watched it happen last year, opening day. The biggest buck I've ever shot walks in front of the camera several times, and I check after I shot him. I checked my cell cam app, and I checked the memory card after. Not a single picture of him. If I would have been basing my decision off of that morning, if I wouldn't have been able to hunt, I wouldn't have been going the next day. I feel like that happens a lot.
Anything that's man-made, there is human error in it, and cameras are one of those things. So, and a lot of people. I don't mean to cut you off, but a lot of people think that on your cell phone, on the app, on your phone, that you get every picture. You do not get every picture.
No.
I hadn't checked that card in 6 months. Well, dude, there's probably a bunch of stuff that you don't know exists on that card right now, because the technology doesn't allow that to have the time to send every picture that camera can take. So think about that.
Also on my private cameras, like I have a corn feeder and all that stuff set up. I've noticed some of the like, I don't want to call them more mature bucks, because hell, he's probably only like maybe 4, but they don't, especially during like November and stuff, when they're kind of, maybe in the pre-rut phase, like late October, they aren't too curious about the corn. So like, especially if you're like me and you have your camera pointed at your corn feeder or something, more than likely, you're probably not going to get that buck regardless. At least I haven't, because I've kind of had similar experiences that Christian has. You're in your stand and you see a buck kind of skirting off into this like thicket, barely kind of peeking out, maybe trying to follow a doe, but he's also trying to stay in the thick stuff. And the doe comes into the corn, eats for a little bit, and he just kind of hangs around there. He never comes in or does anything like that. And that's also kind of what you're missing if you just completely rely on the cameras as well.
You're spot on. 2 things I'll target on the end of that is, one, especially during the rut, hunt your does. Hunt wherever the does are going to be. Don't worry about anything else. Hunt your does, because the bucks are going to be there during the rut, I promise you. 2, feeders and corn piles are a huge misconception about big deer. because my experience with especially like the spinner style feeders, the tripod feeders, on our property anyway, the bigger mature bucks, they don't like those. They don't walk right in there to those. They may skirt the edges. They like feed maybe in the distance. One thing that my bucks do like though is the gravity style, like protein feeders, like the Boss Bucks and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Now, bucks on my property, they will go to them, and they go to them a lot.
Okay. Because Christian already knows what I'm about to say. I've had this hypothesis for I don't know how long, that I've gotten better pictures on just a regular corn pile or something like that rather than at a spin style feeder. And of course, last year or 2 years ago, we got on this kick, like less human intrusion, because what I would do is I would drive in with the amount of does that we have and the little raccoon corn thieves. You could dump 150 pounds of corn out and it'd be gone in 2 days. And it's just like, well, that was a great use of my money. Yeah, it gets really expensive, as you probably know. But so I switched to the spin feeder, and I just don't see that good of pics on them, because before there was this 3-year-old buck that I was hunting, or I wasn't hunting him as a 3-year-old, but he would hang around. And then 4 years old, I tried to keep it the same. I had a feeder, but I wouldn't move it to this spot because I just want to keep everything the same. I don't care if it, I kept my human intrusion the same, because as a 3-year-old, he didn't mind me driving in there, dumping the corn or anything like that. So I wasn't going to change anything. And then last year passed, and now it's this year, and I have a corn feeder in there just from honestly time anymore, just going out there and dumping it. I haven't got a picture of him yet. I know he doesn't really summer there or anything like that, but I'm just kind of fearful now that I made that change. And of course it's super loud going off and stuff like that. But that's been my biggest fear so far, is just like having that feeder there. So I don't know. I'm glad you said that though, because I've been beating around that topic for a while.
I think from the spinner style feeder, I'm not saying there's not exceptions to what I'm about to say, but it's a generational inherited trait from the does. I think, because like I'll tell people, like if you're going to come hunt on my place and we got feeders where you're going to hunt, you want to shoot a doe, do not shoot the first does that come in there, because they're going to come in, they're going to have yearlings with them. Those are my training does. They're training those yearlings what to do. The doe that walks out there, stares at the stand, gets all weird, shaking her head, wants to stomp at you, give her a bullet. She can go to the house. But the ones that just stand, I've got does like in some spots, like literally they'll stand under the feeder when it goes off and just let corn rain down on them. And then they'll just start eating. They're just used to it. They've been there for years. They know we're not going to mess with them. They're safe right there. They're at home, but they are my buck magnets when it gets here, because they're coming every day. Until that buck's pushing her, she's coming every morning and every afternoon. The yearlings are coming, like that whole little family group herd, if you will. They're coming, and every day, and they're just going to help you be successful. Now, once those yearlings grow up, if nobody shoots that buck, he may learn that, okay, I'm going to keep coming to that feeder. I'm okay. And then that doe has more fawns, and you just got this training cycle that goes on. Like South Texas is a prime example. They've hunted over feeders so many years in South Texas. They've corned the roads off the trucks and Jeeps with spreaders on them. You ride down the road and stop and turn and look back, and it's full of deer. It's conditioned response, right? I mean, it's from them of like decades and decades of doing that and not shooting the deer that run right out there. Mm-hmm. It's not there's no pressure. There's a high food and high density, so it works. I mean, I've been there, done it, got the t-shirt, seen it. It's pretty awesome. You go see $100 in a day. It's really fun if you like to see deer. So ours don't do that. Trust me. I've tried to do the Texas thing here. It's a Georgia thing. It ain't happening. But
so what would you say about, let's say a smaller parcel of land, because you almost have to run the corn because the neighbor is, but do you think at all they socialize possibly, like one of those spin feeders with danger, even if they didn't shoot, or if they've never experienced, Billy Bob getting shot when he was at your feeder, they could walk 200-300 yards into the neighbor's corn feeder, and where they have, the does have that experience with one of them getting shot or something like that, just from the neighbor standpoint.
Yeah, I do think there's something to that. I do think that, if a doe stands there and she watches some stuff go down, they're they're not the smartest animals in the woods at times, but they're pretty slick. I mean, with age comes wisdom with them for sure. That's why they're harder to kill the older they get. That 5-6-year-old doe, she might be the smartest thing out there.
Yeah.
And especially if she's seen some stuff go down. But I will say this, talking about the bait side of this thing, for historically, if you want to have the best chance at mature deer on overfeed like that, no feeder at all. Like you said, just pour it on the ground, pour corn on the ground. I do think deer will come to that faster than any other thing because it's not a foreign object, that they're trying to eat out of or eat around or eat under and doesn't make noise and doesn't do anything like that. It's just, hey, somebody spilled a bag of corn right here. That's kind of cool. I'll eat that.
Yeah, I love that you talked about the Texas corn thing because I shot a buck in Texas in 2021 and over a feeder, and it was one of those all season feeders. So it's like the ones that like real low to the ground. You can walk up and just press the button and it'll spin it again. And we were picking my buck up in the side by side, and we parked probably 150 yards away. And this kid that I was with, Chili, he's like, "Well, I'm gonna go see if I can shoot a doe right quick." I was like, "What do you mean shoot a doe right quick? We're in the side by side." He's like, "Oh, give me a minute." He runs over to the feeder, hits the button, it spins, and he runs back to the blind and sits down in front of the blind. And I mean 15 seconds. Here they come out of the woods. I was like, no way. They're so conditioned to that feeder and that sound. They just watched another deer get shot. And they were like, nope, no problem. And they came right back out.
The first one to the corn gets to eat, man. That's just the way it is. It's crazy how they do that. And then I remember one of the first times I hunted South Texas with my dad. We were sitting in 2 tripods, and of course, South Texas, if you're on a tripod, you're about the tallest thing down there in a mesquite. Mm-hmm. So we're just sitting there like 8 feet off the ground or whatever. And it's been a little while before the feeder was supposed to go off, I think. So I'm all set up filming, and Dad, he's like, "You ready?" I'm like, "Yeah, what you gonna do?" He's like, "I'm gonna go hit the test cycle on that feeder. Let's see what the party starts down here." And he gets down, he goes out there, he hits the test cycle, puts a little cover back on, and he's walking back to the tripod. We're only 20 yards from the feeder. I'm like, "You better hurry." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because they're running. Deer come running over the hill to come down there to it." And of course, he gets back in the tripod, and we just wrapped up with deer after that. And I was like, "Okay, well, we learned this game. We know how to do it." Your bigger, mature bucks, they didn't really run in there like that. They kind of stood off and watched from a distance, and they kind of eased their way in. I mean, they've probably seen some stuff go down too, but them does, I mean, for the most part, that's how their daily living goes.
This topic's kind of given, this topic's kind of given ammo to those naysayers about corn now. But I just want to specify this is Texas. Texas isn't even really part of the U.S. anymore. Almost like that's how different the hunting is than Oklahoma and Georgia corn-fed bucks. That's all I'm going to say to
trust me. Listening. I've got a few does that may come right in there after it goes off, but I've got no big bucks that do that. I don't have many little bucks that do that. Like it's not a normal thing. Trust me, it's you can. Everybody out there, they can hate on hunting feeders and corn if they want to. It's a tool. It's just like anything else. It's just like using deer urine. It's like planting food plots. I don't care what anybody says. You're manipulating the environment to attract a deer in there. If you want to do it and it's legal, do it. If it's not legal, then don't do it. If you get caught doing it when it's not legal, then good luck to you.
Right. No, I agree. So to kind of wrap this thing up, what we like to do just to kind of bring things back where, kind of make hunting fun again. And also that there are mistakes to be made while hunting, and that's okay. What's that one moment, that whether that be an encounter or a shot opportunity that you've had in your hunting journey that still haunts you to this day, where you almost sealed the deal but didn't work out? So basically, what's your close but no cigar?
Well, the one that stands out the most, I was probably around 19 or 20 years old, hunting in Georgia. I'd never hunted anywhere else my whole life, and I have one of my best friends Fred Branch. He's got a great place to hunt in Georgia, not far from where I grew up. He invited me to go hunting. And so we go hunt that morning. It was December. It was November. It was right around Thanksgiving. And we saw a bunch of deer. I actually grunted in a buck that morning, which was pretty cool. Like, that doesn't happen a ton in Georgia, or didn't back then when I was growing up hunting. Just, learning what I'm doing still. So we're rifle hunting, and I'm a big fan of bolt action rifles. Like that's what I like to shoot. Everybody's got their preference. But what I always did is when I got through hunting, this is not the safest thing in the world. So I'm going to preface this when I was young and dumb. Just let it ride. Instead of unloading the rifle, taking the bullet out when I would get it back to the truck or whatever, I would just open the bolt and disengage the bolt where it could slide open some so the gun wouldn't fire. Well, that afternoon we go hunting, and I sit in the truck, and I'm sitting in the passenger side and look down with my bolts up. So I just close the bolt, put it over my shoulder, and I go get in the stand. I climb up this ladder stand. Again, climbing in a ladder stand, assuming that I have a loaded weapon, is not the best idea ever. Safety first, especially if I got older. But I get in the stand, sit down, everything's good. Been there about 30, 40 minutes. And I look over to my right, and I'm sitting on a food plot that's in front of me, and the road comes right in front of my stand, and it bends and goes away from me, so I can see down the road this way, and I can see a food plot straight in front of me. This is a pretty good little spot. There's some pines, thick pines here, some more open pines over here. Well, I look down, just glance around, look down this road, and I see literally what I think is a horse walking through the woods. I said, holy crap, somebody's cow got it. I mean, like, this is just caught me off guard because we're talking about body size of deer. And sure enough, it's a buck. And this thing is huge, like biggest body deer I've ever seen. At the time, biggest rack I've ever seen. And he walks across this road. Man, that was a giant. And the only thing I can think, well, get your gun up, put it on the shooting rail of the ladder stand, get your grunt call, put it in your mouth, get ready, grunt to this deer, and see if you can make him walk out on this food plot. Just like on TV, right?
It's that easy.
So, dude, my plan works to perfection. I hit my grunt call 3 times. This giant buck comes running out. His rack looks like a fishbowl. He just comes up. His tines are super long, comes out, and he runs right in the middle of this food plot. He's like 75, 80 yards away, kind of quartering to me. He stops. He poses up, bows his chest out, and he's just looking in my direction. And and he stopped in my rifle scope with my crosshairs right there. So I'm like, game over. I squeezed that trigger, and all I hear was click. Remember when I told you about the bolt being up in my gun?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't loaded. So I unloaded the gun, and then thinking with my bolt was up that it was already loaded when I got out of the truck. So I didn't have a bullet in the chamber. So I squeeze and I click, and I can see this deer's eyes just go this big when he hears that click. It's almost like he knew what it was. He's like, oh, crap, I should be dead. So I'm doing everything I can to ease this bolt back, slide it back, put another bullet in there, ease it forward, close it down, get it up, put it on that rail. And about the time I find him in my scope, I see his rear end going in the woods. And out of my life forever. So I learned to always check my gun for when it's loaded and unloaded.
Gun.
And I mean,
I kind of
I almost wanted to cry. Like this deer, in my mind anyway, whatever it's worth. I mean, this at the time was by far the biggest deer I've ever seen, and ever, in Georgia I would say he was 150, 160 inch deer.
That's a big one. That's a big one anywhere.
Yeah. So there you go. That haunts me today. Until I killed that other 160 I was telling you about a while ago. Then we kind of evened that out a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So what do you got going on, plans for this season? You got any exciting other hunts across the South or the Midwest? Are you hunting any other species? What kind of is exciting you about this fall?
One thing I got coming up in late September is I'm going on an aoudad hunt in Texas. I've never taken an aoudad. I've seen a bunch while I've been out there hunting before, and that kind of got me wanting to go on that hunt. So we're going to do that in North Texas in this big canyon area that's got a bunch in there. So that'll be fun. I'm hunting here in Georgia a good bit this year. I'm on my home turf. probably more this year than I have in a while, just because I feel like it's the right time this year. Our properties are right, and I just want to kind of bring it back home a little bit more. I'll go to Texas again for mule deer. South Texas usually for whitetail. We go up to Wisconsin every year and bow hunt up there. That's in a nutshell what my fall is going to be like. It's going to be busy, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. We really appreciate you doing this. It's been a lot of fun. It's good to talk to people like you, and it's cool that there's fellow deer hunters that feel the same way, that are thousands of miles away but still in the South. So it's really good to connect with you. If people want to connect with you online, follow what you got going on, watch some of your stuff, where's the best place for them to do that?
Well, you can always go to our website, backwoodslife.com. We got, all of our links, and we post a lot of videos and stuff on there. We're on all the social media platforms. Facebook, it's at Backwoods Life. Instagram, at Backwoods Life TV. On YouTube, it's The Backwoods Life. We've just got tons of stuff out there content-wise, and encourage anybody to check us out and hopefully enjoy and not hate on us too much like everybody else on the internet does.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for checking out the Hunter's Advantage podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to the podcast. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.